Our next guest on the Adam Thompson Show is Greg Hunter, the producer and the creator of USAWatchdog.com. This is an excellent news source to get a different perspective on what's going on in the world around us. The site's slogan is analyzing the news to give you a clear picture of what's really going on. This site keeps a good eye on the government, your financial interests, and they cut through all the media spin that you get from the regular mass media just by turning on the TV every day. Greg brings a really good background into his site, and also when he's doing his radio show, from having worked for many years with ABC News, CNN, and other news outlets as an investigator, correspondent, and journalist. He gets to the bottom of what's important, and what I like about the site, like our show, he does not come at the news from a Democratic or Republican or a liberal or conservative stance. He's just looking at the news, analyzing the facts, and trying to really cut through to the bottom line of what's important to all of us. And I'm sure we could all appreciate that. With that said, I'd like to welcome to the show Greg Hunter. Greg, welcome.
Good to be here. How you doing?
I am doing great. I had a great time this afternoon looking over your website. Again, it's USAWatchdog.com. I recommend everyone go there. And it's just filled with excellent information about what's presently going on with the government shutdown, the crisis with the dollar potentially collapsing, and what potentially we should do. So I really want to focus on that with you, since it really seems like you really put some great info out there that people may not be aware of. So let's start off. Where do you think our country's going with this fiscal crisis? Is it something we really need to be worried about, or is it really a smokescreen?
Well, the kabuki theater of the debt ceiling government shutdown is the smokescreen. The real problem is the long-term solvency issues of the country, and raising the debt ceiling is just going deeper into debt. We have the adult needs to stand up in the room and say, hey, we take in 2.6 or 7 trillion, we spend 3.6 or 7 trillion, we got $1 trillion shortfall a year. That's like somebody making $100,000 a year spending $28,000 every year more than they take in. So, the problem is the long-term solvency of the country, and bondholders and debt holders of to America, and there's 12 trillion liquid U.S. dollar assets held outside the country, dollars, bonds, stocks, all kinds of stuff outside the country, that if these folks start selling, that could be a big problem, and it will be a big problem ultimately with the U.S. dollar. Ultimately, all the money printing and to buy bonds and the money printing to finance way more than what we have money for is the problem in America, and it's coming. The can is going to go tink, 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 and then they'll kick it again and tink, 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 and then they'll go tink, and then you won't hear it anymore because it'll be over the cliff.
Well, it's a scary thing, and you make a very good point in that we're not going to ever get control of this outrageous debt that's floating all around us because we keep spending more than what we have. But I think you make the excellent point on really what the big issue is, and the big issue here is the long-term solvency of the United States.
And they took away Congress.
How are other countries viewing the dollar these days? I mean, it certainly doesn't have the status that it did in the past. It's definitely weakening by the day. I mean, we're going to see the collapse of the dollar and switch to a new market altogether, like a gold standard or something different?
Well, we're going to see the erosion of the dollar, and until it gets to a pitch to where everybody starts running to the exit doors. I mean, in 2000 or early 2001 or so, it was about 120 on the USDX on the Dixie, and now it's 80. So it's lost pretty good chunk of value in the last 12, 13 years. Debt holders of bonds, treasury bonds, and now this is the most liquid market in the world. That's why it's such a great market. It's so liquid, it's so big. If you have $2, $3, $4, $5 billion, you can't park it in a bank and get $250,000 for insurance. You need the full faith and credit of the American government, and there'll be less people wanting to buy our debt, less people wanting to hold our debt, more people wanting to sell our debt, and that will be dollar negative, and that is the problem with this deal. And this deal that they just said that they just did, apparently, and this is being reported on Politico and Drudge and other places, and this is just out, I wanted to bring this up, is that there'll be less control over the Senate. This is Mitch McConnell stuck this in, and apparently got a couple of $1 billion for his state because he's running for re-election this coming 2014, that, the president can veto something unless the Congress has a two-thirds majority. They can just pass an increase in the debt ceiling. So Congress has just usurped its own authority once again. We got sold out once again. There's no adult in the room. There's nobody in there wanting to say, hey, this is, if we don't fix this, the blow-up is going to be way worse than the fix, and nobody wants the political heat that somebody's Medicare got cut, or somebody's Social Security got cut, or the military got cut, or somebody's food stamp program got cut, or unemployment got cut, or need I go on? This is the problem.
It's unbelievable. Well, someone has to step up and really be a voice of reason. We know it's not going on right now as we see both sides fighting, and it makes you really understand at this point, if you really didn't understand it before, that is there really any difference between the Democrats and Republicans, because neither side really did anything really instrumental to try to get us out of what this big mess is right now as we loom and face hyperinflation.
Let me give you a fine point on that. Back in they had a vote in Congress, in the NSA, and it was about almost equally split. It was a very close vote. I think there was 12 votes between, but both Democrats and Republicans voted for the NSA to continue spying on us, and both Democrats and Republicans voted against the NSA, to rein in the NSA spying on us. And guess where Nancy Pelosi, who's the head of the all the Democrats in the House, the minority leader, and John Boehner, the majority leader, guess where they both voted for? To keep on spying. We just had about 4 weeks ago, they had Ben Bernanke in front of the House of Representatives, okay, in front of the Finance Committee in the House and the Finance Committee in the Senate. Now, you've heard about all the sequestration and them fighting over $85 billion for a year for the spending cuts, $85 billion, which is a drop in the proverbial federal budgetary bucket. You've heard about that. But yet the bankers are getting in $85 billion a month. They're getting $40 billion to the biggest banks each and every month. And I ask you, why doesn't somebody on the Democratic side of the aisle or the Republican side of the aisle and the finance committees on the House and the Senate ask one simple question? You know what that question is? Which banks are getting $40 billion each and every month? Which banks? Why not?
Well,
that's $500 billion a year.
It would seem like the obvious question. It would seem like the obvious question. And once you know who those banks are, you really start to learn who's in control and who's really pulling the strings here. Because
this is the secret handshake society.
It's all what's going on behind closed doors. You have a really 1% elite group of corporations and families that control a lot of wealth and how the financial markets are going to run, and they dictate really everything down, and other people just carry it out. It's a pretty scary thing. I mean, do you see the U.S. with all the spying that's going on and all these corrupt things that we see around us? Do you think the U.S. is heading towards a soft dictatorship?
Well, I think that's kind of what we have right now, isn't it? I mean, with all these executive orders, isn't that what it is? DHS buying all this ammunition and buying all these armored vehicles. Those are real stories. Those are bona fide real stories that you can, the IRS buying, 7,500, AR-15s because, they're a great defensive weapon. What do they need that for? I mean, I think they're
it's
scared
scary
to death.
When you see this FEMA camps that are supposedly being set up and bullets are being purchased at an outrageous amount by the military and the government. For what reasons, we don't know. But it just raises more questions about where the money is being spent and where it isn't being spent and why we're in such debt. I mean, I remember a few weeks ago, the first real head-scratcher I had was, we're talking about how the dollar's on the verge of collapse. Everything seems to be dismal at this point in our financial market, and yet we were ready to go into Syria and launch an all-out war and an attack, which would cost in the billions of dollars a day to do. But yet, when that got sidetracked and it never happened, all of a sudden now there's such a bad debt that we have and no money around, we got to shut things down, put in sequestrations and so forth. Why was there no money to pay to keep the government open and these other places open when we were just about to finance a war?
Well, because we still are the world reserve currency, which means we can print tons of money. And, the problem is sustainable. It's like that old law, it works until it doesn't, and this is going to work until it doesn't. And when it doesn't, I think the rest of the world, this works as long as the rest of the world says, wow, we believe in the dollar and we believe in America and we believe you're going to get your financial house in order and we believe we're going to get paid back our money plus interest for loaning it to you. We're going to get rewarded for loaning you money and we're not going to get paid back in confetti. When the rest of the world realizes that, whoa, we may not even get paid back, let alone getting paid back in dollars that have any kind of buying power resembling the dollars we gave you, that's the problem, and therein lies the really big problem. It's the rest of the world. The rest of the world has so far been, we're the dirtiest clean shirt in the hamper. The rest of the world has been willing to put up with what we've been doing, and this deal is not really a deal. They did fix the debt ceiling, though. They fixed it. They did. I'm serious. They did. They made it so there has to be in order for the president they can vote no. The president will have to sign it. He can veto it, and then they'll have to have a two-thirds majority, which they won't. We've just fixed the debt ceiling. We've just fixed it. If the House votes for it, we have fixed the debt ceiling debate. Thank you, Mitch McConnell. Thank you very much for sticking that in there and spending some more money. Democrats, Republicans, the same.
It's just a circus that never gets better, and it's the same act over and over. Well, let me change course just a little bit, still connected to this. If the dollar is really on the way out, where do you think the next real currency is going to be? Do you think it's going to be switched to the gold standard? Do you think China or Russia? I mean, China's one of the biggest emerging markets right now. Do you think that they would be able to really be the world's next currency and do the reserve in place of the U.S.?
They are right now. I don't know if the next step isn't a total replacement. Although China's calling for that, they're out calling for that. But the next step is the erosion of the U.S. dollar, and it doesn't have to be totally replaced to cause huge problems for America. They just had, you've had all these yuan, which is the Chinese currency, and currency swaps with other countries like Russia, like Brazil, like India. Those are big economies, like, the BRICS countries, trading amongst each other, not using the dollar. And the latest one just happened last week where and I found this especially troubling, that China, the world's second largest economy, and one of the world's biggest creditor nations, they just made a swap with the European Union, with the EU, for the euro. So the euro and the Chinese are going to begin trading in yuan and euro, no dollars. Again, when you don't need dollars, and and everything has been settled globally in dollars, then those dollars have to go somewhere. They come home, and when you have a lot of something, the price goes down. And the other thing that is pretty disturbing is that a lot of countries, according to some of my sources, are net sellers of treasuries, that we're having a harder and harder time selling treasuries. As a matter of fact, I think the official number is I think the Fed is buying about 90% of all new issuances, which is an unbelievable amount. People have, this is such a big thing. This has never happened in human history, this kind of money printing, we don't really have any free markets anymore. We have manipulation, we have money printing, we have phony accounting from 2009, we have, robo-signing, was really forgery and perjury and fraud on the court. It wasn't people signing documents really fast. It was forgery. We had liar loans.
We saw how rampant that was in the foreclosure.
Yeah, it's still happening
around the country.
I'll give you another one. Here's a great little thing in the news, right? Okay, so, and I'm neither Democrat nor Republicans, and I don't want to carry Jesse Jackson Jr.'s water, but, he misused $750,000 of money people gave him. Okay, bad boy. And they put him in jail in the this is a federal case. This is Eric Holder's Justice Department. They prosecuted him and stuck him in jail for 30 months. John Corzine allegedly stole $1 billion. No jail time. HSBC admitted to laundering money for drug cartels and countries on the terror list, like Iran that funds Hezbollah, like we were going to go to war against them in Syria, and no jail time. They paid a fine. Deloitte Consulting, a subsidiary of Deloitte & Touche, they paid a fine for helping another big bank evade, launder money and hide it from the U.S. They paid a fine. Oh, and they got told that they couldn't be in the securities world for a year. A year. But Jesse Jackson
some
Jr.
real disciplinary action there. It's
oh,
just
man, I'm
mind-boggling
so
that
glad
the
he is
people...
off the street. I am so glad that I can now take my family out in the street. Jesse Jackson Jr. is off the street. Oh, hooray, what a villain. And all these other guys?
Well, it's just mind-boggling that the people that have perpetrated some of the biggest frauds with the most mass amounts of money, as you said, really went unpunished and are walking the streets. I mean, when we had the entire housing collapse and you saw banks closing and bailouts from the government had to save so many multitude of banks, did you see anybody from Wall Street or any of these people from the banks that misappropriated these funds, any of them get prosecuted?
Bernie Madoff.
None.
Well, Bernie Madoff did, but, he was, in the grand scheme of things, he's a small... What happened to the LIBOR rate rigging scandal? They were rigging in interest rates. Whatever happened to any of that? LIBOR, London Interbank Offered Rate, is the rate globally for something as many as $800 trillion in transactions globally. What happened there? Nobody went to jail over that? Anybody go to jail? Anybody go to jail for laundering money for drug cartels? Anybody go to jail for securities fraud? I mean, they took liar loans. This is what they called them. They were no-docket loans, right? Liar loans. They took liar loans. They knew they were liar loans, the banks. They bundled up into securities. They rated them AAA when they weren't, equal to a treasury when they weren't. Then they turned toxic. Then they committed perjury, and fraud on the court to take them back. And now the Federal Reserve is buying them back at the tune of $40 billion each and every month, and nobody in Congress says a word. They want to ask. They don't even want to ask who's getting $40 billion a month, $500 billion times 12, almost $500 billion a year. And neither Democrats or Republicans will even ask who's getting the money. That's too stupid to be stupid.
Well, we all know the reasons the questions don't get asked is, like you said, follow the money. And if you follow the money, you'll see that the people that aren't getting charged, why nothing's being said, is this is where the funding comes for all these politicians who run. This is part of their lobby groups. This is part of their financial supporters. And you're not going to bite the hand that feeds you. These people are funding the money to the people that are sitting in office that just look the other way. And they take targeted little people that they can make an example out of, like you said, Jesse Jackson Jr., just to say, look, we're doing something. Why his father isn't saying
anything, I'll never know. That's another thing. Why isn't Jesse Jackson Jr. saying about his son, wow, they put my son in jail for 30 months, and none of these other people are spending a day in jail? Why isn't he saying? Why isn't he saying anything? Why isn't that on MSNBC? Why isn't that on Fox?
For you would think that it would be a big topic of conversation. NBC. Right, and they have such easy comparisons to make about crimes that dwarf that, and it's being overlooked by the media, and it's being overlooked by the people in office to do something. Well,
overlooked on purpose.
And that's when people go to your site, it must be very eye-opening for them. And when people listen to my show, I try to bring on guests like you who have a different point of view, that think outside the box and know when you're watching TV, these are basically actors feeding us lines off a teleprompter that they're told from other people who are being told from other people, and it's a whole long train ride until you get to the last stop where it's someone dictating what everybody's going to be doing. It's almost like that show with Patrick McGowan, The Prisoner, where who's number one and who's pulling all the strings, because it's one person really dictating everything down, and the one person here are these elite corporations that just have mass amount of money in the trillions of dollars that basically run the World Bank and all these other entities that people are very unaware of. And once you start unpeeling, the orange, and you peel it back and you say, wow, this is what's underneath, it's mind-boggling to people that they don't believe this kind of stuff can go on. But like you said, when you have people stealing billions of dollars and they're getting probation or not even charged or it's overlooked, even worse, they get bailout money to keep doing it. They get to have their CEOs take a $30 million bonus even though they know that they were involved in bad loans and bad deals. It's like getting rewarded for this.
Look at Jamie Dimon. I mean, he's got fined almost $1 billion for this London whale thing, right? So he came out and said it's $2 billion. Now this is the CEO of Chase $2 billion. Now, we were all led to believe that, once he found out what went on, boy, he was on top of it, right? In Congress, his top lieutenants testified, he was involved in everything, including, there's a story on my site about this, including, and it's all backed up, including waving off regulators and not giving them information they were asking about the London whale trade. Now, he comes out and says it's $2 billion. He goes down to a big shareholders meeting in Tampa. He gets a nice big fat payday, and whoops, it's $6 billion. Actually, 6.2. He missed it by 4,200 million, the smartest guy in the room. He gets fined another $900 million they get fined, right? So that puts that up to a little bit more than $7 billion loss for the bank. On top of that, they just, are going to lose another $11 billion for improperly handling mortgages. What do you mean? You just put them in the wrong pile? You mean you got, coffee stains on them? Improperly. They can't say, so they're paying $11 billion for that. Let's do the math on this. $7 billion for the London whale trade, including fines. $11 billion, including fines and restitution for the mortgage-backed security, mishandling of fraud. No fraud, no crime, no wrongdoing, no malfeasance. Nobody. How does Jamie Dimon have an $18 billion loss and still have a job, let alone why isn't anybody going to jail?
And that's the question. And why we don't have
answers, how does he have a job?
Is unbelievable.
Who can lose $18 billion instead of, atop of that? Who can lose the $6 billion and be completely involved, according to his top people, including the people trading in London, said, "Oh yeah, he was totally in charge." Did he know what was going? Yeah, he totally knew what was going. Yeah, yes, he did. Yeah, he was totally involved, totally in charge. What was portrayed to us was, once you found out, he really got. No, he was involved from the beginning. He was waving off regulators. He was taking control, according to congressional testimony. And how does he have a job? Isn't there some law against coming out and making material false statements and then later finding out that, oops, it was way off? Isn't that at least a breach of his fiduciary?
And it depends who you are. And depending who you are, you will get prosecuted.
But
now, with all this dismal stuff that's around us that we're talking about, I mean, aside from the dollar just dropping, I mean, another big concern that we have to have in this country is also getting a credit downgrade, which seems very imminent, and it seems like it's in the process of happening again. What effect would that have on the company and the dollar if we get a downgrade?
Well, the credit rating agencies, being able to endlessly increase the debt ceiling is a good thing and a bad thing. And the good thing is, well, we can increase, and they fixed that. Now, listen to me. They have fixed that. You're not going to have a debt ceiling fight again. You're going to be able to have a cover vote where the Republicans and the Democrats can vote, I don't want to raise the debt ceiling, and it'll go through, and the president can veto it, and then they can raise the debt ceiling. So they just gave up control. Thank you, Mitch McConnell. Thank you, Mitch McConnell, for giving up control, buddy. You got a $2 billion payday in Kentucky. Thanks, man. Business as usual. Term limits. So the good thing is that they can raise the debt ceiling. Here's the bad thing. The bad thing is that all the rating agencies, and there's going to be a new one coming out of Asia, and that's the one that's going to make a difference. Standard & Poor's, Moody's, Fitch, those are the three big ones in the U.S. Standard & Poor's downgraded the U.S. debt, a year or so ago, and then it recently got sued by the Justice Department. So, for $5 billion, and that, you think that made any difference in how they'll rate the U.S. debt? Anyway, so the good news is they can raise the debt ceiling and they can keep paying people in dollars. The bad news is there's no control over the budget. We still have a huge fiscal gap, and it's going to get bigger. And at some point, and according to John Williams at shadowstats.com, and he's on the site, he thinks this little food fight that we just had is a trigger event. People will look at it like there's no way they're going to fix this. There's no way they're going to have meaningful spending cuts, meaningful increases in taxes, although the Republicans did give up $600 billion over 10 years, the last time around. And you got to worry about increasing taxes and taking more money because it slows the economy down. But there's no appetite to cut anything. Nobody wants their military, their Social Security, their food stamp program, their subsidies for ethanol, their farm subsidies, their Obama said nobody wants any cuts. And the problem with that is that the rating agencies, will give a credit downgrade, which will exacerbate an already weakening dollar. Ultimately, people will sell our bonds, and bonds are nothing more. U.S. Treasuries are nothing more than a wad of dollars wrapped up into a bond, and hopefully you'll get paid, interest in the future and more interest to actually give you a profit and make up for the inflation. And what will happen, I think, the first thing, people just start selling dollars. People start selling bonds. It'll be dollar negative. Then if we get a credit downgrade, it'll exacerbate things even worse. And so the first thing is, the real issue isn't so much the credit downgrade, which is a problem, is that the world's going to look at this and say, okay, we're back to another conference. They couldn't get anything done since the last one. They had 2 years to do it. Now they have to get this done by January. And yeah, they'll raise the debt ceiling, but they're not going to have any control. They're just going to be expanding the debt ceiling and spending money, and there's no control, no putting the government, the country on solid footing. We take in 2.6 or 7 trillion. We spend 3.6 or 7 trillion. We got $1 trillion cash shortfall. That doesn't account for all the things we get on the hook for. Last year, the real deficit, what we went on the hook for, according to John Williams, if you use GAAP accounting, was, $6.6 trillion. That's what we went on the hook for 1 year. Now, come on.
So with all this looming out there, should people have their money in dollars? Should people really start putting their assets in precious metals like gold?
I do not sell precious metals. I am not an investment advisor. And some people shouldn't buy gold or silver. They should go put a new set of tires on their car. They should go and maybe have 2 or 3 weeks of extra food. They should get their house in order. Most people can't do that, and they shouldn't do it, because they end up needing the money. They have to sell their metal, and then there they are with a lawsuit. Well, I got a loss. I mean, buying precious metals should be seen as an insurance policy. You have a car insurance, right? You have a car? You have a car?
Absolutely.
Okay, so at the end of 6 months, you got to pay another premium. When you buy, to put it in force, when you buy, and you hope you don't use it, when you buy any precious metals, it should be a core asset. You hold it and you forget it, and you have to have enough income, enough cash, enough other investments in order to be able to do that. Now, I'll tell you, China is importing tons of gold, and their country's run by traders, according to Martin Armstrong. And I'm not a big pusher of buy gold now. I don't sell gold. You can't buy it from me, and I don't make anything. I'm not a gold seller. But everybody, if they can, should have a percentage as a core asset holding gold, and no GLD and SLV, exchange-traded funds, are not gold. And I would not buy mining stocks because it's too much research and stuff. You should have a position, and as a core asset. Years ago, they used to say, hey, you should have 5 or 10%, 5%. People like Martin Armstrong say it's to insure against the government and calamity and bad choices. And to that I say, how's the government doing? How's that working for you? How do you think they're doing? And those are the people who should probably buy some gold as insurance.
Well, in light of
not as a trade.
Iran just took a position recently that they just want to sell their oil in exchange for gold. And from what I understand, I believe China and Russia have entered into an agreement where they will buy gold from Iran strictly using gold currency.
Well, yes,
now, what impact,
done.
obviously, does that have on the dollar? That's just another way of bringing down the dollar as a world currency.
Look at the people think, oh, the dollar's going to crash. Well, at some point, yes, it will crash. But what happens is a little drip. China does a yuan, rupee swap with India. China, does a yuan, ruble swap with Russia. China just did a yuan, euro swap with the European Union, the biggest trading bloc in the world, incidentally. And then you have these stories where, Russia is going to, trade with Iran with oil. In oil and gold. China may be trading in gold. And China, China wants a world reserve currency. They would like to have the same thing. They imported 846 tons in the first 8 months of the year of gold, and they're a very big producer. I want to say they're, I don't know, in the top 2 or 3. I think U.S. is number 4. But anyway, they don't sell any of their production, so they're accumulating gold like crazy. And I think everybody...
And what does that mean to you? Do you think they're trying to set themselves up as the next real main currency holder for the world in place of the
they're
U.S.?
going to be here's what they're going to try to do at the beginning anyway, and they're going to be a competitor to the U.S. dollar. And now a lot of people say, well, you have to have the dollars in the treasury markets, and they're right. The treasury market's the biggest in the world. But this is one of those things where, the dollar is going to continually, and this deal in Washington, a lot of people may think that they're going to take a victory. Nothing got fixed. It got kicked down the road. The one thing did get fixed. We're not going to have any debt ceiling fights. They're going to vote on it up and down in the House and the Senate, and then they're going to send the bill to the president, and he's going to, if it's not what he likes, he can veto it, and then he can raise. They just gave up control of the debt ceiling. Now, make no mistake, we're going to keep printing money, and we're going to keep doing what we're doing,
there's no asset behind the money. It's just paper
Correct.
At this point.
Well,
so with all that we've been talking about, it seems like doom and gloom, and listeners must be very negative at this point. Let's try to get something positive in there. What positive is coming out of this? There has to be some, silver lining in the clouds out there. What if there is any silver lining? What is it that we should be looking for? What is it?
Well, we're going to have a good Christmas. I mean, I don't know what to tell you. What's going on today has never happened in human history on this scale. You can get that from not just me. Jim Rogers, the famed investor, I think he's worth at least $300 million. He said that not too many weeks ago he says it's never happened in recorded history. This has never happened. We've never had this kind of money printing. We've never had this kind of all countries printing money at the same time. That's according to Jim Rickards, who wrote the best-selling book Currency War. We've never had this. And so how is this going to shake out? The good news is that for people listening to your show, you should take some steps to prepare yourself for if in the event that we have some sort of disruption. And the big weak point for America is going to ultimately be the dollar. Ultimately. Now, people like, Martin Armstrong say there won't be hyperinflation in America because, as ugly as the U.S. currency is, still, people will hold dollars. Well, I don't know. I'm not so sure. If that's the case, then we'd still be at 120 on the USDX. We'd be back where we were but something's wrong with the dollar. I mean, you're down.
Do you think it could get bad to the point that we might see martial law put in effect?
I think I'm a little less conspiratorial. I think that there's a lot of people out there way smarter than me, and they know what I know and more. And I think they're scared to death that we could have a big dollar sell-off, and we could have the value of the dollar get really hurt, and the wages wouldn't really keep up. I had John Williams on, and he says you got to look at it this way. If let's say you have gold at $1,000 an ounce, and it goes to $100,000 an ounce, it's not so much that you made $99,000 in profit. It's that now a dollar's worth a penny. And so, the problem is, and gold should be looked at, I think, as an insurance play. And if you're a trader and you want to trade and you want to make money and buy and sell high and buy low and all that, I'm not a trader, and I don't suggest people to do that unless they really know what they're doing. And but I would say that you should have a core asset that you can afford to hold through thick and thin. And if you can't, you have no business buying it. If you're looking at your precious metals,
because a lot of people have lost their savings that they worked their whole life for in a bad stock deal or some investment that they fully didn't understand.
Well, stock market is absolutely terrible. I mean, we're back to where we were. What are we? 1,000 points more than we were in 2000? We're 1,000 points more than we were in 2007. I mean, how are you making money? And that doesn't count all the companies that went out of business. How are people making money?
It doesn't also include the roller coaster ride going up and down, because if you don't have the assets to float when the market crashes, if you're buying on margin, you're crashed. You're done.
You're correct.
So,
And
only a few people could ride out these waves where they could buy when it continually drops and then hold it till it goes up again. And we know who that is again. Back to the one percenters.
Most people can't trade their own accounts. I will tell you that. Most people don't know how to. They don't want to spend any money. They've been told that a mutual fund is just like a savings account. It is not. Galen Greenspan has and Bernanke, particularly Bernanke, were widely reported that Bernanke wanted people in the stock market, wanted people in the risk market. That's why you're getting what is a percent for you get a percent interest rate on your money for 3 years maybe. You get 0.5% for a 2-year, it's something to that effect. You're getting nothing in terms of
You get nothing
interest.
while the banks make money lending your money out. We only have a minute or two left. I already went way over because you've been a tremendous guest, Greg. There's so much information to get. Before we go off, I again want to urge all my listeners, please go to Greg Hunter's site, USAWatchdog.com. It's got incredible stuff on it. If you want to stay up to date on really what's going on, go here to get your news. This is what I say do. Watch TV and hear what they say, and then go here and see the difference in what you're being told, because you'll be getting something that's manufactured versus something that's more real. And you want to get the real news, and I think Greg's site does it good. I just want to end on this. We're talking about all the corruption that's going on out there. I always look for red flags, and we're talking how the dollar's collapsed. And I found something also on your site that I found very interesting, how Chase is now limiting the ability of people to take out a certain amount of a withdrawal. Can you tell us a little bit about this?
That's November. I think it's going to happen in November. And I think that, Gerald, I had Gerald Talente on my site not long ago, and I asked him, what do you think is going to go on? He says, well, they're not going to crash it now, and they're not going to be and everybody that I have interviewed in the last, 2 or 3 weeks, all said there will be no default. Paul Craig Roberts, Nomi Prinz, Karen Hoodis from the World Bank, Nomi Prinz from It Takes a Pillage, a former Goldman, director or Goldman bigwig, Paul Craig Roberts, the former assistant treasury secretary. Everybody said no, they will not default. And so this thing with the bank. So Gerald Talente says, I think they're going to crash it. History's going to rhyme again, and they're not going to do anything now up to Christmas, and we have the big harvest season and Christmas season. Yeah, they're going to do it at the beginning of next year, sometime February, March. They're going to have a bank holiday, and they're going to revalue stuff. That's what he thinks. That's what he's suggesting, and I think that may be also. But this is according to John Roberts, what has just happened in Washington is a trigger event to people holding our debt. And that there will be increased pressure to sell our debt, sell our dollars, get out of our dollars. That's basically our treasuries are a dollar instrument, and you'll see increasing pressure on the dollar, and more sales and more machinations to prop it up. And at some point, it's going to be a huge inflationary problem, if not hyperinflation. But this is a trigger event. This is our creditors are not looking at this kindly. What has just happened in Washington.
With that said, everybody, that was Greg Hunter, USAWatchdog.com. Greg, thank you for your time. I got to get you back on again in the future.
Thanks for having me on.
Thank you.